So what I'm talking about in terms of a strong voice is someone that is prepared to take a stand on a moral high ground and say, hey people, if you want out of the swamp, out of the pluralistic, narcissistic, new age, postmodern swamp, it's this way. Now, to a lot of people, that's going to sound awful. It's going to sound like judgment. It's going to sound like dominator hierarchy. But to the right people, that is a clarion call that they've been waiting to hear. Someone that says, well, there's a way forward. We are up against the edge of our culture. We're at the end. And whether that's the fourth turning, whether that is moving from Pisces to Aquarius, whether that is the coming out of the Dark Ages in terms of the Vedic cycle, so it's the end of the Kali Yuga, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You can see in every way that we're at the end of something. We're hitting population collapse. We are going to have a big financial meltdown and recalibration. We're at the end of the fiat monetary system. So we're at the end.
I found it interesting when you said that people are almost craving someone to have a strong opinion, that people are drawn to that. But I'm thinking, like, is it just any opinion? Or I guess what I'm getting at, do you think there's an objective truth that people might be resonating with? So you're saying in the postmodern era, it's like there's almost not such a thing anymore as one objective truth, because everyone is privileged to have their own truth and there is no objective truth. People are not just drawn to any strong opinion, right? Like it has to embody some sense of objective truth, if that even exists.
Higher level of spirituality, yes. But of course, you make a good point that especially in times of crisis, that people are drawn to strong voice, right? And we have to be careful that's not the strong voice of fascism or far right or any kind of extremist ideology, which is conflict oriented. So what I'm talking about is a strong sovereign voice, a higher calling. So someone that is prepared to take a stand on a moral high ground and say, hey people, if you want out of the swamp, out of the pluralistic, narcissistic, new age, postmodern swamp, it's this way. Now, to a lot of people, that's going to sound awful. It's going to sound like judgment. It's going to sound like dominator hierarchy. But to the right people, that is a clarion call that they've been waiting to hear. Someone that says there's a way forward. So maybe we have, some people in our social media or some people in roles of leadership somewhere that are that, but there aren't many of them. And I don't think that there are many of them at a spiritual level, because we've had a spirituality which is gentle and passive and heart-based and inclusive. It's like the compassion of the Dalai Lama and the sweetness of Ram Dass and the God-centered connection of Paramahansa Yogananda. And I think that although the essence of what true spirituality in terms of non-dual awareness and our highest potential is concerned, all of that has never changed. But the culture in which that expresses itself does move and change, and therefore it calls for something else. So I think that we are in we're kind of a desert, in a wasteland where we need a clear voice from people that are prepared to say, hey, it's this way, people. This is what it looks like. It looks like sovereignty. It looks like higher values. It looks like commitment. It looks like responsibility. And on one hand, we don't have those leaders, really. On the other hand, the problem is that everybody needs to do this on their own. I guess what it would look like maybe is one person going first and saying, hey, everybody, it's this way. And then they continue walking. And people look to that person as an example and they emulate that person. They don't become they don't ask if they can be a disciple of that person, and that person doesn't look to be their guru, We don't need another Osho cult, but that person will inspire those people to also become sovereign, and all those individuals push upwards. And then when everybody gets to the other side of whatever postmodernism is, then we can come together, create new structures, new communities, and new ways of being together. But then we have a group of sovereign beings, and that's going to look a lot different to the way spiritual communities look today.
Yeah. Yeah. Spiritual communities are, I can imagine, only a small percentage of the population, right? So do you think that spiritual communities and people that are on a spiritual path is a good starting point to later on seep into society? So I think you're right in saying that the postmodern culture has seeped into the spiritual culture, spiritual community. So do you see the spiritual community as a good place to make a change so that then later that can seep back into whole of society?
I think so for two reasons. The first reason would be that spiritual community has always been necessary for people to be able to hold higher values, because you know, as a spiritual seeker, how difficult it is as an individual to sustain practice, to sustain higher motivation. You know, it's challenging on your own because you are in a sea of people that are not interested in it. You know, then they're not interested in evolution; they're interested in the status quo. So then, in whatever stage in culture, spiritual community is essential because it allows us to support each other in a higher, vibrational rate, in a higher value system. Why I think we can also answer that question in a new way is to say that given our current circumstances, we are up against the edge of our culture. We're at the end, and whether that's the fourth turning, whether that is moving from Pisces to Aquarius, whether that is the coming out of the dark ages in terms of the Vedic cycle, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. You can see in every way that we're at the end of something. So we're hitting a population collapse. We are going to have a big financial meltdown and recalibration. We're at the end of the fiat monetary system. So we're at the end. So the only way forward is to let everything as much as possible collapse, because it's not sustainable. And then we rebuild. So then your question about communities becomes very interesting to me, because I spend a lot of time thinking what's needed, because that's what I'm most interested in is, we're going to have a really tough time. How do we prepare already? How do people that are waking up unconscious now get ready? A lot of people are sort of doom preppers. So they've got a bunker full of canned food, and they've got a generator and some clean water and maybe some gold and silver stacked away. But that's nice for them. But what about on the other side of this? So then I believe that the only way will be collectively. And I think that we're going to be forced to come together, just to be in sustainable small communities and, farm, make food, get access to water. I don't know what level of sustainability, whether it's going to be survival level or whether we'll have a lot of systems still in place. Nobody really knows, to be honest. And, but we're going to have much less government. So we're going to have, if we have any government, it'll be much smaller. And then it's going to be up to us. And I think that's an interesting contemplation. And then, yes, I think that a lot of those communities will be spiritual, but a lot of them won't. A lot of them will just be like people that are farmers and people that are practical. But there will be people that are aiming to strive for the highest heart-based path that they can find, and that's what I'm interested in. And I'm interested already to lay out the blueprint for that, so that we can hit the ground running as soon as we can.
Yeah. So if spirituality has to look like something, that basically means we need to make spirituality practical, apply it in our material lives because of all the problems that we're facing.
Yes. So a lot of people, me included, I looked at spirituality as an escape. So I wanted to get enlightened so that I could escape samsara, get out of all of the suffering. And then my journey brought me ultimately back to planet Earth, even more so than in the beginning of my spiritual journey. So I realized, like, oh, it's all about being here, and that actually enlightenment in terms of striving for non-dual awareness, that's great, but is that really what we need right now? And is that what people really need now? And I think that, this is why part of my journey was with my first teacher, who taught and pioneered what he called evolutionary spirituality, which was to take the enlightened perspective and then to put it into an evolutionary context and understand that we have to make the journey of enlightenment something that happens like here on this planet with each other, and that we go from the escapist perspective to the embodied perspective, and we can have all of the insights, realizations, and God consciousness that the non-dual perspective brings, but actually we can bring all of that here as embodied enlightenment, and we lose none of the insights and gains of that way of thinking, but we get to bring it all here. And I think that that's really, really what a human life is about.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess in the end we do need to sustain ourselves, make money, eat, sleep, be healthy, all of that stuff. So I guess it might be more needed in today's day and age, but I guess it's of all ages to apply spirituality just in daily life rather than just while meditating.
Yeah, I don't think that we can go backwards, right? I don't think we can go back to some kind of caveman or tribal or very basic way of being. I mean, I think we could, but I think that if we try to get clues from the universe, from what spirit is doing, human beings find themselves in an evolving context. So we're becoming more conscious, more aware. We are looking to come together at higher levels of communion, understanding, and integration. And I think that that is how the universe works. So I'm interested in how to bring everything that we have into whatever the next level is. And I think that, if we do have very difficult societal collapse, maybe we do get thrown back to some kind of prehistoric level and have to start all over again, which would be kind of tragic, really, because there we'd have to spend so much of our precious time at the survival level, hunting, farming, and all that kind of stuff. And we want to have time free to evolve at the level of consciousness and connect with God and spirit. And so I think that we don't want to go back to survival level. I think we've got to
Yeah.
find out what's next.